Very excited for our next guest. Probably out of all the documentaries done on Kurt Cobain and even Nirvana, Montage of Heck in 2015, without a doubt, is the best. But outside of that, our guest, producer, director, documentarian, Chicago 10, Speak Your Piece, extremely compelling. The Kid stays in the picture. And the latest, Moonage Daydream, which is the documentary on David Bowie. Brett Morgan, how are you, sir?
Oh, I couldn't be better. Thank you, Jason.
David Bowie and Moonage Daydream. We'll start with Moonage Daydream. Why that song to title the documentary?
Well, I never wanted to call the film Bowie. You know, I resisted. The studio would have loved if I called the film Bowie, but Bowie can't be defined. You know, he can be experienced, and that's what I'm trying to offer viewers in this. So I did consider for a moment calling it Bowie in quotations because I thought that I wasn't making a documentary about David Jones, the man. I was making a film about Bowie. You know, the aura, the energy, whatever that was. It's almost like extracting the wine from a grape. I was interested in the sort of cinematic flavors and juices that we can kind of put onto an IMAX screen and just kind of bake in and bathe ourselves in. And so while I was making it, it was called Station to Station. And when it was done, I looked at it and I was like, it's a Moonage Daydream. I don't know what a Moonage Daydream is. I really don't. What is that? You know, but that's Bowie, right? It's an enigma. To me, it feels like really colorful and kaleidoscopic, and that's the only way I could describe the film, man. It's a Moonage Daydream. I mean, listen. I had the privilege and opportunity to create a David Bowie experience in IMAX, working from the original. Like, we didn't take the songs, we remade the songs for an IMAX room, spreading the stems everywhere. The Bowie estate gave me access to everything in their archives. And, you know, I love music, but I love going to the movies more. That's my first love. You know, as a kid, I just would lock myself into a cinema and see the same movie 3 or 4 times. And the movies that have always really excited me are those that are like, you know, like Fantasia when I was a kid was just like life-changing experience. Yeah. Seeing Pink Floyd The Wall 5 nights in a row on acid at 14 totally fucked my head for life. And I think my whole career has been trying to kind of reconstruct or recreate that experience in a cinema. I'm not a documentarian in the way that we traditionally think of documentarians. My films aren't intended to be fact-based or Wikipedias or, you know, I don't go to the cinema to learn. I go to the cinema to have an experience. I can read a book to learn. And to be honest, books are far more adept at the kind of biographical components of an artist's life. Because in a documentary, if we're just talking real estate here, you have, what, 2 hours, right? How are you going to do David Bowie 50 albums in 2 hours? You know, it would be Cliff Notes to history. You would get nothing from it. So Bowie deserved a film as audacious and enigmatic and adventurous, I think, as he was. And, you know, I made the film by myself. I didn't have any input from anyone. I was my own writer, director, producer, editor. I had final cut from the estate and from the financiers, cut it during the pandemic. Nobody saw a frame of anything for the first 4.5 years I was working on this film. And it was just like an intimate arts and crafts project, you know, that like, I'm just like, when I showed up to IMAX the first time, I kind of, they didn't hire me. I sort of thrust myself on them. So I'm like, I want to do this IMAX music experience. And dude, they're releasing it tomorrow in 40 countries, including Ukraine, all around the globe. And I'm just tripping out right now. Like, if I have weird energy, it's the energy of a guy who's just spent 7 years on this like little tiny thing that is now going global. And the response from the Bowie community and from the film community, and we had sneak previews across America Monday night, man. I just like can't believe everyone sort of got it. Like, I didn't think they were going to get it. Like, I brought my wife in at some point. Nobody had seen a frame. I'm like sitting, you know, I had a heart attack right before I started the film and flatlined. and was in a coma for a while. And so when the pandemic happened, I was really freaked out. Like I couldn't be around anyone. I couldn't be around my kids. So I brought my futon, moved it into my office, and was totally isolated, making a film about a guy whose stock and trade is how to be creative during periods of alienation and isolation. And about 6 months into the edit, I told my wife, I'm like, you got to come in here. You got. I need someone to tell me if I'm okay. And she said, "Well, do you want notes?" I go, "I just need to know if this actually is a lane. Like, can you follow what I'm doing here? Am I insane?" And I swear, man, I thought I was Jack Torrance from The Shining. I was like, when she sat down to watch it, I thought I was totally going to get exposed, and she was going to look at me with that look she had when I woke up from my heart attack, just totally terrified. And by the way, I didn't. So, and she saw it, and she was like, "Keep going." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Really?" I was like,
Well,
"It makes sense."
our wives are our biggest and best critics. I do the same thing with anything creative that I do. My wife is the first person to run it by her because it's such a raw reaction and it's an honest reaction, right? That's what
Very
you're going to
honest.
get. Unconditional reaction from your spouse. You should at least.
Totally. And her what she said was so needed, which was just like, it's a diamond in the rough.
Hmm.
Keep working, and it's going to be okay. Because this was traumatic. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. This was, I obviously, I had some health issues, and we ran out of money in the second year, and I didn't have an editor, so like I couldn't take a day off. If I took a day off, nothing was gonna happen. So it was pretty stressful. Not because of the gravity of handling David Bowie, just trying to figure out how to create a new genre.
Well,
Like
the picking of Moonage Daydream, that was kind of I've seen the trailer for this, and you're right, it just jumps out. It's so IMAX friendly. It's going to be an amazing experience. I, like you, love the theater. Always loved the theater as a kid. I'm assuming you were a Dark Crystal fan even when years ago, right?
and
No.
that's our age difference right there. I was no, I was I got in him at Scary Monsters,
Uh-huh.
and when Let's Dance came out, even though I was only like 13 or 14, I was like, I
Mm.
started getting Black Flag, and like like I had turned away. So by the time 84, 85 came around, I'd kind of drifted off for a while.
You were already rebelling in the mid 80s. See, in the mid 80s, I was about 10 years old, born in 75. So I'm hitting my, the technological stride in my early coming of years days. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so you're like the labyrinth. Like
Yeah.
your age. People were born when you were. They're like, hey, is there labyrinth in film? I'm like, labyrinth. The fuck is that? Like labyrinth. When that came out, dude, I was going to like punk clubs and shit. I wasn't like labyrinth, but I listen. I hear you. I threw in a couple shots from labyrinth just to do some fan service. I rarely do fan service, go out of my way, but I was like, yeah, I know a lot of people like Labyrinth. We're gonna have to tip our hat. And Dave, by the way, when I did come to Labyrinth through the context of reviewing all of David Bowie's work, one of the coolest things is because I screened everything chronologically, and it took 2 years to do it. And I would put his films in the same sequencing as all the documentary footage and all the other materials. And I really started to like hone in on why he would choose a role, like what his, because sometimes it's like, why was he doing, what was the interest in that? Like Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. I never, he's great. It's actually my favorite Bowie film as an actor. But until I understood the story about Bowie and his brother Terry, as soon as I heard that story, suddenly the whole movie sort of came into focus for me. Yeah.
Well, what was the story? Can you say now, or do you just want to make
Yeah,
sure?
well, it's actually one of the few biographical elements that I included in the film. But Bowie's brother, he had an older half brother who introduced him to John Coltrane, introduced him to Jack Kerouac, introduced him to Burroughs. He was his David's cultural passport to the world. And unfortunately, he went into the army and came back and had schizophrenia and was in a mental hospital for the remainder of his life. Ended up escaping and killing himself in the early 80s. And this really, haunted David. Not the killing, just the schizophrenia. And I think one of the things David talks about in the film is that he was art gave him an outlet for that. That it was survival really. That he thought it was the one thing that sort of kept him sane. So yeah.
Wow, that's there's always that. That's why I love what you do. Especially with the Cobain stuff, because again, that's my wheelhouse, and I, I was raised on grunge as a latchkey kid, but you find these nuggets of information when you do this work, that it's like you're the guy that reads between the lines and then feeds it to us when the rest of us are just reading line for line. Does that make any sense to you, Brett?
Yeah, because what I'm interested in is the intangible.
Yes.
Like again, if you can put it in a book, I don't want it in a film. Facts don't bring you closer to an understanding of an artist. Artists don't work like that. And I've been blessed because with Cobain, I had access to everything. I was seeing things that nobody else had ever seen, so I had a vantage point to really have a deeper understanding of, with Montage of Heck. I didn't talk about this at the time it came out, but in many ways, it was like a question: why did Kurt kill himself? And working backwards from there.
Uh,
Not like what happened the last 2 weeks, because it was predetermined. It was already set in motion long before that. And bro, you mentioned you're a latchkey kid, right? So was I. That film was about my generation. It's I'm a year apart from Kurt, and had a mom who's incredibly narcissistic.
mhm.
And that line in that film, what the most terrifying line in that film is? When Kurt's mom says, talking about Kurt when he's 10 or 11 and her own life, and saying, "Is this it? Is this all there is? I knew there had to be something more for me."
Mhm.
Like, lady, you had a kid, and what that generation did is they got married because they wanted to have sex. That's it. They married the first person they slept with at 18. And then the 60s happened, and they were seeing it all on television and shit. And they're like, wait, I want some of that.
Mhm.
And so what happened to us? They left us at home and to fend for ourselves. And it was a tough time, man.
And thank God the TV existed, right? And because that was our babysitter.
Dude, I'm the Judd Apatow and myself are like, and probably you are like the three guys who could be like, we can't tell our kids not to get off their screens or not to watch TV, because, dude, I just watch TV all the time. Like when I was in the movies, I was watching TV as a kid. Like it's gonna ruin your. I was like, no, you know what? It was like, it's fine. I watched Brady Bunch and Andy Griffith. I mean, we didn't have a lot of options, but yeah, dude, it didn't. It got me to where I am now.
You
Watch more TV.
you can take my right arm if I can have dinner with both you and Judd Apatow. I am a huge Judd Apatow fan. I mean, you put any of his movies, especially This Is 40, and I'll sit there and be that annoying guy that gives you line for line everywhere. That's one of the most underappreciated, underrated movies, comedy rom-coms of all time. That movie is phenomenal.
And I can tell you that as great as he is as a writer, director, producer, he's even better as a person and a father. Our daughters were best friends in high school, and
Oh wow, that's great.
yeah, he's incredible, making great documentaries too.
Yeah. So, well, let me. I had a couple things that I wrote down that because I went back and I watched the montage of Heck, and I remembered having this question when I watched it originally, and that was, did you ever find out who the guy was at the end when you're talking to Courtney Love and she's talking about, this led
Yes.
to Kurt, killing himself,
Yeah.
thinking that she's cheating on him, but you never say who the guy is. Is
Yes,
it?
that's right.
You know who it is?
Yeah.
Have you ever said?
No, it's for her to say, not for me.
Really? Okay. So is it a known thing or just a speculated thing?
I think it's a known thing. When she said that in the film, I didn't. I I didn't believe her. Like when she said, I was thinking about it. I mean, I was just like, to me, it seemed kind of, well, here's the thing, whether she did or not
Uh,
is irrelevant because Kurt thought she did,
right.
right? So it doesn't really matter. It's that he believed she did. And that was too much. He tried to kill himself that night.
Because the at the time, I remember the rumor was either Billy Corgan or Michael Stipe. And so my brain automatically went to one of those two guys. And I'm not trying to juice you, but that's
You're
what I
not
was
gonna get me. You're not gonna get me to talk about it, Jason.
thinking. I'm just trying to make conversation.
But
But anyway,
Jason,
go ahead.
if you want to step in some mud, I will step in a little controversy with you if you don't mind.
Sure.
Well, okay, so here's my trip on Montage. Montage of Heck was a movie that was designed to be a sort of third person autobiography in which I allowed Kurt to tell the story of his life through his art.
Mm.
And as I was assembling the film, I felt that I didn't have enough context to set up that aspect of it, that it just we needed a little more context. So I decided to interview his mom, his dad, his sister, none of whom have ever been on camera before or since. His mom recently passed away. And Chris, one member of the band and his girlfriend. It was just very intimate. And the film was, was very well received. Rolling Stone just in their list of 80 greatest music docs in history named it the best one of the last 40 years.
Wow.
Very, the film really resonated with people. So I'm going along. We open the film. Everything's great. And one day I see this thing online that says Buzz Osborne from the Melvins says Montage of Heck is bullshit. And I'm like, what? And I read the article and it says, yeah, the story about the quote unquote retard girl, that never happened. I would have known about it. I knew Kurt if, and based on that, Montage of Heck is bullshit. And that got picked up by Rolling Stone. It got picked up everywhere. And if you go to Wikipedia, it's actually now part of the legend of the film. And I was like, dude, it's a short story he wrote that he's narrating, like not in his talking voice. Like he's not, it's like a Nirvana song. It's based on something. It's the emotion of it is honest and pure and raw, just like a song. But just like a song, it's wrapped in metaphor, it's wrapped in also, in all sorts of stuff. And to me, it was blatantly obvious. The first line of the film, this movie is based upon Kurt's art, his paintings, his spoken word. It's spoken word, but was an art form for Kurt. That story of Aberdeen, I pulled off a 90-minute cassette tape where he was just doing all of these poems and short fictions. And that one, now it definitely resonated as more kind of autobiographical in nature. I subsequently, and I won't get too deep on this, but I think I know what he was basing that experience on, that he baked in metaphor. But, it was like, dude, the thing with Kurt is Kurt wasn't the type of, Chris Novoselic said to me, he didn't understand the problems Kurt had until they were doing press for Nevermind. That Kurt didn't talk about, the punk world in the punk culture was not really like, you get all emotional with your friends and shit. I mean, that was one of the, sort of things. It was just like, there's a lot of, it wasn't a lot of like emotional, like hugging and crying. And that's not how people kind of were engaging, so to speak. So, as you know, Jason, there are a lot of things I don't share with some of my guy friends that I will share with my wife. And so, it's interesting because I don't know these people in life, but when I have access to all of their journals and all of their diaries and all of their art, you do get a different vantage point. And so, I don't know how anything in Montage of Heck can be bullshit when it's all primary source material. And
Yeah,
the people,
and the stuff that you got and the people that you got on camera. I mean, again, if you haven't seen this and you're a fan of just that generation and definitely Nirvana, I didn't even know he had a stepdad. Or I didn't even think about it, just the siblings and the friends and in the house. And you just kind of put it all together and you're going, I get why his head was there. But let me ask you this, because not only with Cobain, but Bowie, two guys that were living legends, when they were alive, even though I don't think they knew they were as big as they were. Definitely Cobain did not. But when they die, like a lot of other artists, they become these figures, these there's lore, there's myth, there's truth, there nobody knows what it is. What is it about the death of a successful rock star that puts them in that category?
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you if you don't mind. I think
Sure.
Kurt was well aware how big he was.
Okay,
Um,
absolutely. Sure.
and that's what freaked him out. And that's why he retreated into his apartment with Courtney. He had total awareness of his where he stood. He knew the meaning of being on Saturday Night Live. He knew what it meant to be a Rolling Stone. He had dreamed of it his whole life. Um, Bowie, through the 70s and 80s. I mean, the 80s, he was the biggest star on earth. He took Michael Jackson off the charts. Bowie was well aware of his fame. What I will tell you is that there's a line in the movie in Moon Age Daydream where David says, and this is from '73, I think. He's talking to Mick Rock backstage somewhere, and he said, we're the new false prophets, we're the new gods, we're not real. And they are, they are our gods. We don't have a need for the Greek god system because of the world that we're living in. It's a little antiquated, but we kind of honor and celebrate entertainers as our kind of gods, and as such, they when they pass, they become myths. And what is a myth? It's a story that's handed down from generation to generation. Each generation defines it and makes it their own. And so I didn't call the film Bowie because I can't define Bowie. Someone's going to do another interpretation of him in 10 years, and that film is not going to be get you about David Jones. It's going to be about the person who makes it 10 years from now. It's going to be about the world that they're living in, and they're going to choose the elements of David's life that reflect that landscape. I'll tell you something really interesting about Montage and Moon Age Daydream. My wife came and said this to me after she saw them. She said, Moon Age Daydream and Montage of Heck are two sides of the same coin. One is about light and one is about pain. And Kurt is someone who for every day was kind of painful. Life was very difficult, and he was a raw nerve. David was someone who had such a deep understanding and appreciation for the brevity of time that we're allowed on this earth, and he wanted to take advantage of every second. So Moon Age Daydream is really a life-affirming journey. I mean, it's like how this is a roadmap on how to lead a balanced and fulfilled life during an age of chaos and fragmentation. Bowie was so ahead of his time that, as he states in the film, he was writing a soundtrack for the 21st century in 1971. And I think part of that is he wasn't a futurist. Great artists can pick up on transmissions and frequencies that the rest of us can't.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was describing the world that he was living in, it just on a different level. In many ways, I started to view Bowie as a cultural anthropologist who was sort of time stamping his way through life. And that if one wanted to know what life was like at the end of the 20th century, they're probably better served going through Bowie's catalog than reading a kind of dry and cold history book.
Yeah. That the Greek god thing, I've never heard that. That is so true and so profound. I couldn't agree with you more. That's just such a great way to look at it. And you're right, when there's something about creative people that have an intuition, and they're almost like visionaries, and they can foreshadow the future.
The first audience for Moon Age Daydream, I have a friend of mine who did the movie Inconvenient Truth, Davis Guggenheim, who's done a bunch of projects with U2. So Davis called me up and said, Bono's in town. Can you show him the film? And I go, Davis, I haven't shown anyone the film. And he said, well, he's only here for this weekend. It's Bono. And I was like, okay, sure. So, so then he calls back and he goes, so it's going to be Bono, his wife, The Edge, and his wife. And do you mind if Eddie Vedder comes along? And I was like, far be it from me to say no to Eddie Vedder. So I'm like, yeah, sure, Eddie and his wife can come.
Where are they going? They're your house?
No, no, to a screening. Oh, I had to find a screening room like that. Like I had to like, I'm like I'm on the phone like, did you got Dolby Atmos? So we go to Raleigh Studios. Oh, and the last thing was he's like, the day before he's like, hey, Bono wants to ask Sean Penn to come. Is that okay? So my audience for the first ever screening of Moon Age Daydream was Bono, The Edge, Eddie Vedder, and Sean Penn.
That's great.
And I didn't know what anyone was going to think of this film, you know. And I remember I was shitting my pants the night before.
Mhm.
And my wife was like really nervous. She's looking at me and she's like, "Why are you so, you know, what's the worst thing that could happen?" I go, "Well, the worst thing that's going to happen is the movie's over and they're going to turn to me, walk out the door and go, 'Thanks.' And that's it.
Mhm.
And I'm going to be sitting there like, what just happened?" Like, because I can't text them. I don't know them. And she goes, "Well, what's the best thing?" I was like, maybe they ask us out for dinner or something, you know. And yeah, I was reaching for the stars. And so we go, we meet at the theater, and Sean was the first one to arrive, and you know, he can be quite, you know, a little, you know, I mean, I've been a fan my whole life, you know. It's like it was a little, dude, if I'm doing a film on you, I'm very comfortable, but like outside of that, I'm very awkward in these environments. And the film, you know, I start the film, and about 4 minutes in, the first cue kicks in, which is "Hello Space Boy" from the Outside album, Pet Shop Boy remix. By the way, not on anyone's bingo card as the first song in a David Bowie film. And I look down and I see this head bobbing. I'm like, and I look at my wife. We're in the back row. I'm like, "What is that?" She goes, "It's Eddie." And I'm like, "Oh shit!" And then all of a sudden we see another head bobbing. I'm like, "What?" She goes, "It's Bono." And by the time we get to All the Young Dudes, which is kind of early in the film, Sean, Bono, and Eddie are like fists in the air, pumping out, and it was honestly the greatest experience, not because of who they were, but because of how responsive they were, how physical they were. And I had my hand on the volume control, and I was just cranking it because they could take it, and they were digging it. And when it was over, Bono stood up and was like, "What the fucking fuck? That was the greatest sounding film I've ever heard." And they ended up inviting us out, and it was like an amazing evening. And the next day, I got an email from Bono, and he said, "You know, I saw a lot of continuity between how you were approaching the work and how we approached Zoo TV." And I went and watched some Zoo TV. And Zoo TV, I remember, you know, when it came out, but I wanted to refresh myself. And I wrote him back and I said, "You know, when Zoo TV came out, it seemed futuristic,
Mhm.
like you're some sort of you know, prophet figure or something." And I said, "But what I've now come to understand is that you were writing about the world that we were already living in, just nobody else had seen it but you." And
Mhm.
I think that's what great artists are able to do. They're able to tap into those transmissions and frequencies and write about the now, not about tomorrow, not about yesterday, but about the now. That's time stamping their journey through life. And that is a rare gift that very few artists are endowed with. But Bowie, I think more so than anyone, and was very cognizant of it. You know, talks about it in the film, and from an interview from 1977 that he really thought of himself sort of as an anthropologist.
Has any artist come to you? You know, because going back, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you on something, sir. Is that when you have Eddie Vedder, Bono, The Edge, Sean Penn sitting in a empty theater watching your film for the first time, and they're digging it and they're into it? Yes, it does matter who they are because they are experts. They are experts in the field of what you're doing the doc on. So,
Well,
you know,
and to even go further with it, Bono was, as I was driving to the theater that night, I remember that Bono was at David's wedding with Amon and was like part of the wedding party. So I'm like, oh my God, not only is he,
mm,
you know, Bono, but he also is very close to David.
Yeah.
And so that added another layer of yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And it was funny. I said to Bono before the movie started, because like David lived a life that few of us can even dream of living. But I did make the film in a way that it can, like a Bowie song, um, allow you to kind of reflect back onto your own life. And what David's talking about, whether you're a day laborer, or a teacher, or an artist, you will, trust me, you will be thinking about yourself and your own, which is what Bowie does. Listen, we listen to David Bowie. It's not like we understand David Jones. We understand ourselves better. That's the thing. So, but that said, there are probably about 20 people on earth who can view the film not as metaphor, but like these are all things that I do. Like, like, and Bono's one of them. I said that to him before the film. I was like, dude, there's this whole section of the film where David talks about sort of flaming out in the 80s, and it's again, it's like, unless you're a rock star, it has to be metaphor.
Hmm.
And so the audience does matter, I guess, in that sense. And that was a very high, elevated audience who were very sensitive to sound and respectful about the experience. I think one of them said it was like they hadn't heard anything like that since Apocalypse Now, and which is a huge source of inspiration for me. And listen, I think with Moonage Daydream, so I've been on this press junket. And so my wife said to me the other day, because I don't, Jason, I don't want you to feel, you know, like I don't know what, but you're like the thousandth interview I've had to do this summer.
Right.
And my wife was asking me, but I've been very much enjoying talking to you. I just
Thank
want you to know that.
thank you.
My wife said to me the other day, what was the best interview? Who's the best journalist you've spoken to? And I said, well, I had an interview last week in London with a sight impaired journalist. Okay, she can't see. And she was so blown away by the film.
Wow.
And that was like, I never even contemplated that for a second.
Yeah.
Because the film, I like to feel sound rather than hear sound. And when we mix from David's original stems into Atmos and 12.0, we've wrapped it around. I mean, it is an immersive experience. And the fact that she was able to sit in this kind of it's not an overt narrative, and she picked up on everything I was trying to say and do in the film. It was kind of amazing because I write with sound. Like, when you write the film, you edit the film, and my sound design work isn't about Foley. It isn't about just trying to get the sounds that are on screen to reverberate. I approach it from a whole nother way. Like, I'll put a roller coaster roll in there and put this thing in here. And I want this sound to be warm and this sound to be cold, and the sound becomes the form is the content that I'm trying to make a film that's not about David Bowie, but that it is the kind of experience of Bowie. It's a very different orientation, and yeah, I don't know where I now I hit a dead end. So yeah.
No, that's fine. Has any artist come to you, Brett, and said, I'm just such a fan of your work, what you've done for, maybe after Moonage Daydream, they see it and they're like, what you've done, the story of David Bowie, of course, the story of Kurt Cobain. When I'm gone, can I get you to do me? Can you write my story at some point in time? Has an artist come to you and asked you that?
Well, I'll tell you this: when Montage of Heck came out, Patton Oswalt tweeted, "Don't ever let Brett Morgen have my journals." Jack, I love Patton. Yes, Jason. Many times I have turned down tremendous financial opportunities.
Really?
Dude, here's the new bar. You ready? And I'm not going to name names on who these people are, but when the pedigree are the Rolling Stones, David Bowie, Kurt Cobain, and Jane Goodall, if you're not on that level, like, I'm sorry, it's I'm not a guy for hire, and to be honest, I don't think I'll make another music doc at this point, because what's going to be better than fucking Bowie? I don't know. I mean, there may be artists today who are freaking awesome, and I'm just not, it's not resonated with me like as a lifelong thing as Bowie. And I felt like with Bowie, I went into the deep end, and I don't think I have it in. I know I would never allow myself to do this again. 7 years, no pay for the last 4 years. That's not happening again. And so, but after the kid stays in the picture, dude, the amount of people who came up to me and wanted their like version of the kid stays in the picture, I'm like, I did the kid stays in the picture. I'm not doing that again. Like that was Bob's film. Bob got that. That film was designed for Bob. Montage was designed for Kurt, and Moon Age Daydream is designed for Bowie. I had this fantasy that at the end of my life, I would be sitting in some library, like and on the bookshelf, it'd be like all my movies, and it'd be like Jumanji.
Mhm.
And because they're the experience of the subject, not the facts of the subject. And I loved it. Jason, I'm having a wonderful time. I really am. I don't know what happened in some past life that put me in this position. Dude, I set out to be a documentary filmmaker, and next thing I knew, I had an all access pass to the artists who fucking shaped my life.
Right.
And it's like, I'm sorry. I don't want to boast, but I have the greatest job on earth. I got, when we had money in the budget, I was paid for 2 years to sit and go to work every day and watch David Bowie. Like
Mhm.
that was mind blowing. Like that was not, when I say I would do it for free, I did do it for free for the last 5 years, because my financier forgot to put a delivery date in the contract. So while they wouldn't give me any more money, they had no ability to get me to turn the film in. And since I own my own editing equipment, I was just like, oh, I'm not. We were supposed to release this thing in 2018, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna work on it till I didn't go this far. I didn't come here to go short on a David Bowie film. Like I'm gonna. This is my life's. This is everything in my life. Everything I've ever done has led to this moment. This was like the moment, where it was all coming together for me, and all coming together for me. And I had to fucking discuss. Like I had to throw everything out that I knew and start over again in terms of being an artist and a filmmaker, and allowing myself to be more spontaneous, and allowing myself to reject virtuosity, and to embrace my mistakes, and to understand that there are no mistakes. There's just happy accidents. And I mean, I learned so much from David about how to create art in a way that can enhance your own experience in life. And he really say, I got this watch here, right?
Uh-huh.
And the reason I got this watch is because whenever I want to know what time it is, and I look down and I see the lightning bolt, I think of David,
Mhm.
and it just makes me feel good. It grounds me, it centers me. Bro, this movie is a dream for me. I mean, it's cinema that I love, like just exciting. Like my son said, Dad, you never know what's coming next. And I was like, yeah, that's like, because you go see regular movies, you're like, okay, the next scene is gonna be this and that. And this film just is like shape shifting, and like David. And to work with Paul Massey, who did Bohemian Rhapsody, and he's a 12-time Oscar nominee, the greatest sound mixer on earth, the guy the Academy went to say calibrate our room for us. To work with an artist like that in reconstructing David Bowie's music, wow, man, that was like, this has been otherworldly for me, and to go on this crazy adventure where I'm working by myself in isolation for 7 years. And then we showed up at the Cannes Film Festival, and I was like, I'm usually a wreck when I go to a premiere, because you're by yourself and everything's really pure, and then all of a sudden everyone's reviewing you, and they're like, like his hair looks funny, and like I hate going to the premieres. This one was different. This one, I smiled. I danced down that red carpet, because I just was like, I was so stoked. I didn't care what they thought in the room. I had done it on my terms. I made the film I wanted to make. I did not compromise anything. I stayed with it until I thought we had, cleared the hurdles. And I was rewarded at 2:37 a.m. on a Tuesday morning with 2,300 people at the Cannes Film Festival rising to their feet for a 5-minute standing ovation. And dude, I thought this was going to be a film that like, four people would get. And it's been like, I haven't touched the ground yet. It's this whole summer has just been like, wow. And doing it on your terms like that with it, no input. It was, someone said to me, why did you do it that way? And I said, there was a little bit of ego wrapped into it, a little bit of like, I can do it all by myself. Like, I'm either gonna fail or I'm gonna succeed. But like I kind of feel like directors who don't edit aren't really directors. Like I feel like it's for this, and that's not true. I'm just being
Right.
bravado and shit. But like I used to shoot, I edit, I designed my sound, I did all the mashups for the film. I went to Hampshire College where there was no collaboration in this film. We were taught to be, experimental avant-garde filmmakers and do everything yourself. So I kind of like the fact that like I'm never going to do it again. I mean, this was a one-off. Like this will never happen. I will never make a film by myself like that. But for Bowie, it needed to happen. It needed to. My wife says I'm a method director,
Mhm.
and this felt that it was like a one-on-one engagement between David and myself, and I just needed to work through it.
I love the passion. I just, a guy at your level that's done what you've done, and yet your passion for this project, Moonage Daydream, is, to the moon, which is phenomenal. I know you have to go because you've got more interviews to do, but I did want to ask you real quick before we go. Do you have anything, you'd mentioned before, working on this and how long it took, and I can assume like a musician, there are things that you've worked on that you've pushed to the side and said, I'll come back to it. Is there anything that you have in your vault that you need to go back to?
No, not at all. I've never started something and not finished it. I'm I have a film that I'm going to start sometime next spring, and a film that I just finished, a sort of secret project that I can't get too into, um, for next year. And other than that, man, I'm kind of winding it down, I think. Like I've had a great career. I need to do something different with my life. I'm 53. I've been doing this since this is all I know. And one of the things I took from David is we only have one life.
Uh,
And it doesn't need to be, there's other things and other opportunities and other ways to express myself. And I'm too, you know, yeah, I'm ready for something new, man. And I thank David for giving me that input. You
what
know,
is it? What do you want to do? You got to have some kind of idea.
I do. You're gonna think I'm fucking crazy, but like
Let me
I
guess.
want
Let me
to, I
guess.
want to
Let me
run,
guess.
I want to run an Airbnb.
Oh shit! Really? That wasn't my
Yeah.
guess. You want to just? I mean, not like a B and B, but an Airbnb.
All right, I'm gonna advertise. Yeah, I have a house in Hawaii on the Big Island,
Mhm.
nowhere near the golf courses and hotels in a place called Waipio Valley with some of the best views anywhere on earth. And nothing excites me more than prepping the house for guests because I'm all over, bro. The smells, the flavors, like the music, like setting the mood for family reunions.
Mhm.
And then reading these people like, oh my God, our family came together. And dude, I love it.
I get it.
My wife's like,
I've got a couple of them, so I get it. I've got a cabin up in North Georgia called Paradise City, and families. I love hearing the reviews. It was perfect. Our kids loved the swings. It was so great that they were entertained by the pool table. The fire pit area was amazing. We had s'mores. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, I get
yeah,
it.
no, it's kind of to me an extension of filmmaking because it's creating an experience.
Mhm.
Jason, we got to go. If I can
Yeah.
just say in closing, Moon Age Daydream is opening nationwide in IMAX on Friday the 16th,
Yep.
and will be in 500 cinemas the following week. And if anybody is listening to this outside the U.S., we're opening day and date across the world Friday. in IMAX. We're opening in Ukraine, we're opening in Poland, we're opening in Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, Israel, like all over the place. So
That's great.
come celebrate Bowie. Jason, thank you so much. It's been a
Thank
pleasure
you.
speaking with you.
I hope to talk to you again. Thank you for all the time. Best of luck with the project. Like I said, I'm a fan, and thanks again. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Brett.
Thanks, Jason. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.